Hello everyone, welcome to this week's Market Talk, and we actually have a special on mental health today. So we are joined by Kris Hall, who launched the Burnt Chef project, which is particularly aimed at mental health in the hospitality industry. And we also have Russell Stilwell, who is a champion of Mates in Mind, and that's an organisation which has worked alongside CEDA for a bit. And he's also a qualified Mental Health England first aider. So welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Kris, you started the Burnt Chef project a couple of years ago, didn't you? And it's a not-for-profit enterprise. So can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to develop this?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the project launched officially in October 2019. So we've been going for just over a year now, which is surprising at how quickly it's grown in such a short period of time. But in short, without giving you the whole sort of detailed story, it's through personal experience of mental illness throughout my lifetime, as well as working in the hospitality industry for 10 years from a wholesale supply point of view. That led me to raising awareness of the sheer scale of mental health issues within hospitality specifically, and just trying to challenge the stigma attached to it through branded clothing and open conversations.
Good stuff. And so recently you guys have launched a mental health text-based service. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously the work that we were doing in terms of raising awareness for mental health and encouraging others to talk about it was good. But what it was uncovering was that a lot of people out there needed someone that they could turn to night or day to talk about their mental health issues and to talk openly without fear of being judged. And as we all know, sometimes it's easier to talk to someone that you don't know, and it's certainly a lot easier when you're not having to make eye-to-eye contact. So we spoke to Shout, who already have a very successful text-based service that's fantastic and one that we promoted within the industry. But we really wanted to brand something that was for ourselves. So Shout very kindly gave us access to their service, whereby now anyone within hospitality can text Burnt Chef to 85258, and they will have a response within 5 minutes from a trained volunteer, overseen by clinical psychologists who can actually engage with people, whether you're feeling lonely or suffering from grief, or you have got anxiety or depression or suicidal thoughts. So the service is here. It's a listening ear, and it's free of charge.
And what's been the response to that service so far, Kris? I know it's only new, and you're obviously fundraising for to fund that in recent months. But has that been well received by the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's always it has been well received. Yeah, I mean, it was a big worry of mine that it's still very early days in the conversation of mental health within hospitality, and there's a lot of stigma still that we need to squash. And the service, we fundraised as part of the amount, and it was an epic effort from all involved to raise £3,000 for the service. There's still a long way to go in order to pay for a full year's worth of it. But I was concerned that people perhaps wouldn't necessarily utilize it. But we have had, we haven't just had people using it. We had 14 people in 6 days use the service. I haven't got up-to-date figures so far this year, but I will do from the end of this month. But we've also had messages of people who have never spoken to anyone about their mental health before and have actually outwardly messaged me privately to be able to say, I've used the service, it's helped me massively, and thank you for putting it in place. And that is, I just never expected that at all. So yeah, it was definitely, I think the timing was right, and it's a service that hopefully will be utilized long into the future.
Yeah, definitely. That's great to hear. Russell, we'll bring you into the conversation now as well. As Claire mentioned, you're a champion for Mates in Mind, which is had a connection with the catering equipment side of the industry in the last couple of years specifically. Do you just want to give us some insight into your experiences of kind of mental health in the workplace and how attitudes might be changing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I through a lived experience as well, similar to Kris, back in 2010, I had quite a severe lived experience, actually to the verge of nearly taking my own life. And if it wasn't for my mother-in-law and other family members, I probably wouldn't be here today, if I'm totally frank. So fast forward, I've worked in the construction industry since the age of 15. I'm now 43, so that's quite a long time. Mates in Mind was launched in 2017. Having been somebody that was a lived experience, and originally Mates in Mind was launched into the construction industry. Having been somebody that worked within the construction industry, that ran my own organisation, I got straight in touch with Mates in Mind as soon as I saw this new initiative being launched, this new charity being launched, to bring more awareness of the subjects and wellbeing and mental health into the construction industry. Construction industry, you know, I recognise somebody who nearly took my own life, but has got an extremely high suicide rate. Now, that was back in 2017, obviously over a period of time. So I spoke at the launch of Mates in Mind and have been a business champion ever since, in going around to companies, encouraging them to look in, you know, not as a sales tactic, but encouraging them to get on board the Mates in Mind affiliation, the benefits it can offer to their business. And, you know, it's done really, really well. It's got a lot of people on board. In more recent years, I do know that Stephen and James Rudoni and the guys there have started to branch out into other sectors and industries, which I think is brilliant, because as much as construction does still need a hell of a lot of attention, all industries, especially coming out the other side of this pandemic and having gone through this third lockdown, we all need it. It doesn't matter what workplace it is, we all need it. And I think there's no doubt that the pandemic has sent us all into a state of anxiety, whether it be higher levels or very, very low levels. I think we've all experienced that. And, you know, when you're going back into the work, when people are coming back into the workplace, if they've got heightened anxiety, they're likely to have a larger enhancement of their survival instincts. And that can be either fight or flight, generally. And I think it's a great thing that you're doing, Kris, because at a time like this, when hospitality will open back up again, to enable and allow people that are going to come into the workplace back after what we're going to call potentially this reset, to have a service like that and to have that ability to confidentially go somewhere, send a message, get a response, have a place to express themselves is fair play to you. Really, really fair play to you. And I totally admire you and think that's a great thing that you've done there, an excellent thing that you've set up there. And Mates in Mind, I know will get behind that and try to support that and encourage that throughout that industry. And you know, between us, as you know, the one thing I think we all have to remember is that the reason I spoke at the original launch of Mates in Mind is to give back. It's to use my own lived experience to be able to give back. And Kris, you know, listening to you, lived experience yourself, exactly the same thing. And with that level of collaboration between us all, in any industry, there's a massive tanker to turn with regards to mental health and well-being, to prevent it just being a tick box inside an organisation, for it to actually be a culture. And, you know, I feel that Mates in Mind, working alongside the Burnt Chef project, working alongside Construction Wise Minds, working on all these initiatives that are coming out there, is going to be a very, very big and key driver for the future of mental health and well-being in the workplace.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Russell. I mean, a lot of companies in the catering equipment supply chain on the other side of things are SMEs, small to medium enterprises. So some of these might not necessarily have a great deal of resources to be able to devote to something like mental health. So what would your advice be to those kind of businesses to kind of put something in place to be able to look after their staff?
I mean, the size of my business was classed as an SME. I mean, I had 64 employees. And and we implemented or affiliated with Mates in Mind when we were maybe at between 30 and 40 back in 2017. Now, some of the simple things that can be done, the simplest things are the most important things. So, one, it doesn't cost any money to encourage people to talk. It doesn't cost any money to promote a culture of openness, where if someone's having a bad day, the door is open, and it doesn't cost anything to look out for someone who might be behaving out of character. So there's some things that cost us nothing. They're absolutely cost free. Starting to move on. I mean, Mates in Mind have the start the conversation training, an hour of training for a number of chefs that could get involved. It's almost like a toolbox talk, and to be able to have everyone bought into that same ethos and those same things to look out for, and the ability to ask someone, "Are you okay?" And when the answer, "Yeah, I'm all right," and then just saying again, and maybe even tapping them on the shoulder. Mind you, with social distancing might not be allowed now, but just no, are you okay? Because I'm noticing this, I'm seeing this. I can see that there's something wrong. I just want to let you know. You can't force someone to open up. I just want to let you know that when you're ready to talk, maybe when we can take a break, I'll take a break with you. I'll be able to sit down and talk to you. I guess similar to construction, in a kitchen, when the restaurant's open, it's constantly going. It's consistently happening. So there's a consistent pressure. So sometimes being able to break that and get away from that is almost impossible. But we all have to have breaks. So being able to, from an SME's perspective, to look at someone, to strategize if you can see something wrong. Look, you've always got this number that you can text. Why don't you give it a shot? If you fancy, give it a shot in your break. But also just follow that person. Just keep an eye on that person and make sure they're okay. The next level on from that, in a larger kitchen, or in a head chef with I don't know, 8, 10, 12 sous chefs in different areas, hotel kitchen style, big restaurants. Maybe the training of one, maybe 2 of those to become a Mental Health England first aider. And that's the kind of scale. You've got the free stuff that costs nothing, but it's a policy that everyone buys into. You've got that little bit of training from Mates in Mind that kind of start the conversation. You've got manage the conversation, direct the conversation. There's a number of different packages that exist there. And the next stage on from that is the mental health first aid training. And that goes to half day, 1 day, and then the full mental health first aider is the full 2-day course. So there's a kind of scale that, Mates in Mind and, Mental Health England and other places can assist. And I'm sure if they affiliated with the Burnt Chef project, that there could be a way of introducing some kind of assistance, so that it's not so costly as it can be, because it can be expensive. The time it takes for people to train and the actual cost of the courses. So trying to, it's about us collaborating, using our contacts, using who we know to try and make it all work between us.
Yeah, excellent stuff. That's a really positive, hopefully, endeavour. Coming back to you, Kris, I believe the Burnt Chef project carried out a survey of 1,300 hospitality professionals, which showed that 8 out of 10, or 84% of them, had experienced mental health issues, which is crazy high. So, I mean, did those results surprise you at all?
Yes and no. I mean, we knew through studies such as Boiling Point and also Service Without a Smile that mental health issues were perhaps more prolific within the hospitality industry than other industries that we'd looked at, certainly white collar industries. So to do that, a study, we were expecting similar results, but not from such a large subset of respondents. I still think that 1,273 it's still the highest amount of people that we've, that have done an anonymous survey of this nature within hospitality. And we'll be doing it again as well over the next coming months, now that, back then we had 2,000 followers on social media, and we're reaching 20,000 in total now across Facebook and Instagram. And that being said, and just to go back to your earlier point as well, we're also launching a free training app in the next couple of weeks, which actually provides people with mental health champion training, stress reduction training, personal resilience training, which is free to access for many people. And then for corporates, once they're up and running again and they want to start donating perhaps a proportion of their menu to the Burnt Chef Project, then there's about 30 odd different training modules for managers to upskill themselves. And with that, again, we've got on that particular app, we've got a survey tool. So the more people that start using that app, the more people then get invited into the next survey, and we can get a much larger data set of people to be able to get more up-to-date information. Also, it's worth saying that the Burnt Chef Support Service does track, no personal details, but it does track the number of people that have used the service and what sort of times of day. So that information is going to be critical as well for us to identify the need for something like this and the sheer scale of the problem.
Sure. And Kris, just staying with that survey, I think there were some results within that suggested kind of more than half of those that corresponded with you suggested they wouldn't feel comfortable talking about mental health with colleagues or other people within the workplace. Presumably that in itself is a massive barrier that you're trying to overcome and tackle.
Yeah, I mean, hospitality has never been known for being a fluffy industry in terms of how it's run. It's a tough industry. Let's not make any bones about that. It's often long hours, and it's quite a stoic environment that's usually quite macho, irrespective of if you're male or female. And as a result, I think that the company cultures and attitudes towards mental health have always been quite tough to address with regards to that. So I think if we did the study again and we did it after a year of the Burnt Chef project being in the market, I would expect that number hopefully to start to change. But I think realistically what we are looking at here is a lot of business owners out there don't know how to engage with the subject. And that's nothing against them as individuals or as business owners. It's a complex subject and it can be quite intimidating. But as Russell pointed out, sometimes it just takes asking the right questions and being prepared to listen and actively understand and listen. Even if you don't understand, listen to the answer, to be able to start turning that. One of my ambassadors, Adam Simmons, says it's like turning a cruise liner, not a dinghy. So these small steps do start. Yeah. As these small steps do take, they make an impact long term. And I think it's just a case of education. The more people know, the more comfortable they feel about engaging with it, and we'll hopefully start to see those stats drop.
Yeah, you said at the beginning of the conversation that you officially launched the enterprise, I think at the back end of 2019, October 2019. Prior to the pandemic, obviously, the pandemic has come along, and as Russell pointed out earlier, it's created huge levels of anxiety for even more reasons than before, particularly in terms of employment issues around chefs and restaurants being closed and so on. How has that affected the way in which the enterprise has operated over the past year or so, and the kind of challenges that you now see in the market?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big issue. Initially we set out with a 10-year plan to educate and slowly start to integrate these conversations into the workplace, dealing with the challenges at the time, which were long hours, hot conditions, often with limited work-life balance, poor nutrition. Those were the sort of key variables that we had to work with, and we had plans to get that sorted. And then all of a sudden COVID hits, and people who have gone 100 miles an hour for the last 20 years of their working career and are thrust into a complete halt, into environments that, to be honest with you, are quite unfamiliar. Spending time with the family, being at home, not in your usual work environment, which is your comfortable environment, although highly stressed, proved to be a completely different issue in terms of people's mental health. Suddenly your brain isn't working at the speed it usually works. It's not dealing with all those outside stimulus that you would usually get within a kitchen or a front of house environment. And now you've got to deal with all of those additional thoughts and that lack of motivation and everything else that kicks in, and that shared grief and anxiety that we're experiencing as a nation. So it meant that we had to, and I don't like using the term, it's overused, but we had to pivot and provide more immediate solutions to people, such as mindfulness techniques and regular conversations with industry leaders, so that we can start to utilize the voice that we had. But in a way, I wouldn't have wished COVID at any particular point, and we would have ended up getting to the stage where we are. But it has, as a nation and as a culture, we're now realizing the true detrimental impacts that the lack of awareness around mental health has. Not to mention the impact that's going to have on industries long term. So it has been a steep learning curve, and I think that when employers and employees head back into the workforce when this is finished, they'll be at least slightly more aware of the subject matter, and I think it will make starting conversations a lot more easy moving forward.
Fingers crossed. I hope that's the case, Kris. Coming back to you, Russell. If employers want to kind of put a real kind of focus on mental health and a mental health strategy in place, where should they get support? How would you suggest that they can move forward with that?
Well, I mean, certainly, affiliating with Mates in Mind will provide any kind of hotel, restaurant, kitchen, whatever it may be, with the guidance that they need to implement a solid and robust wellbeing program. The ideal scenario is that there's a proactive approach, and as much as we want to have the types of things in place that the Burnt Chef are doing, the training, the texts, all of the things, that proactive side, that training, that text messaging, the app use of different levels of training, toolbox talks, and what Kris was mentioning earlier, that's brilliant, because that's proactive management of well-being, which is what Mates in Mind and all of us all of us encourage. What we don't want, we want to try and avoid things getting to the stage where the texts have got to take place, where someone has to reach out. We want to be trying to get in at that first stage. We don't, we've got primary, secondary and tertiary stages that that we want to get in early. If we're recognizing something. So I could say to any employer, any manager, being able to be proactive with a wellbeing program it is very important. The other point I'd like to make is that it's very, very easy for organisations and industries to send people off onto a mental health first aid course, to say that there's an app in place, and it almost becomes a bit of a tick box exercise. And it can, I've seen it myself, can breed a culture of people not bothering to check in anymore. Well, you've got a mental health first aider over there, we've got an occupational therapist over there, well, you've got the app. So it's very, very important that the best kind of interaction that we can all get as human beings is the ones where we're talking, where we're doing this. We're talking to each other, all right, we're on a screen, but we're talking to each other, we're face to face, we're all listening to each other, and we're listening to each other's points of views and listening. And that is extremely important. I think one thing I always talk about when I go through it, does any business or any organisation or talk to any industry, is something we do in as a part of mental health first aid training. It's a key part of it, called Window on the World. It's basically frame of reference. The way that you're seeing the world, or the way that isn't the same way as the other person is, or the next person, or the next person. And and if I said to you now, if you're all looking out the same window, right, look out the window, what's the first thing you see? I guarantee each one of you would come back with a different answer. So Indeed. It's being able to, it's being able to, as a manager, recognize that someone's problem, it's theirs. It belongs to them. It's theirs. It's their lens. Taking them to a place of, oh, well, the language that you hear, well, it could be worse. I hear people saying things like, it could be worse. You could be working in a hospital. It could be worse. You could, at least you've got your health. Well, yeah, that's great. But that person is at that particular point, that's theirs. That's their struggling. That's their struggle. So, and that can create isolation. So avoiding creating isolation for people, because the word loneliness isn't just somebody who might live alone, or isn't just someone who doesn't have many friends. That's not that. Loneliness can be we're lonely in our thoughts. We're lonely in the way that we're thinking and what we've got going on right here, right now. So opening up, collaborating, managing processes inside an organisation proactively that cultivates well-being is something that, without a shadow of doubt, I've seen work in my own organisations, and I've seen work in other small SME organisations as well. And I think, it turns a manager, or the person that may be managing people, from a manager into a leader. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another important aspect of it. Leadership, not just, well, could be a tendency for people to feel, well, I'm not going to get, I'm not going to have any conversations because I know there's an app in place. I know that we've got mental health first aid. I know that tick box has been ticked. I know that that's been done. That's not the attitude. We need leadership. Somebody to take the ball by the horns, take well-being seriously, be a champion of it, be an ambassador of it, and drive it as a culture through those kitchens, through those restaurants, and through through the hospital, the pubs, and the hospitality industry. And I think what you've got there, Kris, has got the real capability to be able to do that. And certainly, the likes of Mates in Mind I know would be happy to support you and to for us to support each other in enabling this to grow.
Perfect stuff. Thank you so much, Russell, and thank you very much, Kris. We've run out of time for this week's session, but thank you both very much for taking the time to speak about this important issue, and hopefully that's given some food for thought to the industry. That's the end of this week's Market Talk, and we will see you all again next week. Goodbye.